So I'm here with Adam Savage in his amazing tested shop and looking forward to a conversation where we talk about making and nerds and obsession.
My favorite conversation.
And how digital tools are changing what you do. So let's get into it.
Absolutely.
Actually, maybe an easy way to start. You put some cool printed parts.
Yes, we got some outputs from your machines here. We've got this beautiful crab. What's exciting to me about it is the surface fidelity, the surface detail. I cannot wait to paint him, and I've actually had one printed that's about 50% bigger, just so I have more of this beautiful surface detail to lay paint into.
Mm-hmm. What is it?
This is a crab creature drawn by Paul Braddock. When I see a crab shell, I think of all those different like reds and blue variances that show up on crabs.
And so you're imagining the color.
Yeah, the painter in me gets really excited about the modeling and the distribution of color.
Cool. This nice clear crown.
Yeah, I love the resin printer for the clear stuff. This is my attempt to make the St. Edward's crown, the British Royal coronation crown. And I've got multiple different versions of this. I've printed in every different media, but this is my favorite. For some reason, being able to see through it feels really, really exciting to me. And the clarity continues to get better and better. I'm still not able to print a visor out of this stuff, but I'm very close.
We have a new thing we're working on. We actually have a different tank you can put into the SLA printers that improves the clarity of the parts straight out of the printer without any finishing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still, with visors, there's still a bit of lenticularity, if that's a word, that's very hard to remove from the manufacturing process.
There's like a trade-off where if we make the printing system trying to deliver very high accuracy, then it captures every layer line and every pixel. But if you add a little blurring to how it prints, you trade off a little accuracy, but you get a smoother surface.
Oh, fascinating. So the same sort of efficiencies we're finding with representing things visually, you're finding representing them physically. That like blurring edges. I just got a big lesson in Gaussian splats yesterday.
Yes, similar sort of idea.
And then these guys, this is the fuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. There's something about the fact that the fuse parts actually
you can
ring.
Just tell by the sound that it's like a solid material.
That's the thing. This is one of Wally's eyes, and when I printed this out, I was like, oh, I just.
Oh, they're like the
exactly. There's the eyebrow, and this is how big they are. This is like this is actual size Wally
as well.
I know, it's huge. I have found utility in every printing process that we have wheeled into the shop. I have found that I love the parts out of the fuse more than any other process. I like the way they feel.
What do you want better out of 3D printing in general?
That is a great question. My issues with 3D printing are less with the process of 3D printing itself than with the CAD that gets me there. Look, I built one of the very first MakerBots, that first MakerBot kit, and immediately was like, I can't really see how this fits into my process. 20 years later, 3D printing showed up in a way that was like, oh, this really can actually be part of my process. And as I have wheeled it in and started to go looking for digital files and hire people to make digital files, to me, the big stopgap in the 3D printing revolution isn't in the printing itself, it's in the drawings. It is still really hard to draw competent, highly sensitive, super accurate, aesthetically beautiful stuff in CAD. Translation from my head into a computer is still, I think, the most difficult part of this process.
Yeah, I agree. And that's been kind of a surprise for us because like from the beginning, we've been trying to make it easier to go from an idea to a real thing. You can kind of think of that as two steps, idea to a digital model and digital model to a real thing.
Right.
And we work on the second half. And I guess so much has progressed on that second half that it's starting to feel like the first half is actually the bigger limit. And it's surprising because you'd think working digitally, computers are fast, easy or something, but somehow that's actually more limiting.
You know, you work within a 3D space. You work within objects that exist in 3D. So you've had a lot of experience in your life talking to people who don't work in that space and having to be like, okay, draw a box. Okay, let's start there. And, you know, trying to bring someone into a discussion about three-dimensional objects when it's not their core competency is, as you've experienced, really, really hard. I think CAD suffers from that. I think there are some things that I get excited about. AR, VR might be the way in which CAD can scale to my body in a way that allows me to really dial in and add chamfers where I want and, tell the software what a teacup should look like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, even when you are experienced in CAD, like it often feels frustrating, the amount of time from okay, I pretty much know exactly what I'm going to make and even how to do it, but just the hours it takes to input that.
It's because you've got one drawing in one thing is operating on a philosophy of polygons and another one is operating on some totally different philosophy. And even though they're the same object, they literally have no idea who each other are. And you've got to somehow bring this Russian to this French person and get them to talk to each other.
I've been playing with some generative design tools where originally people have been developing these things more for making really optimized design. So you input the constraints of what this part should do, and then the computer solves for an optimal shape. But I think those tools could also be a path to to more easy CAD, because if you could just describe what you want rather than all the details of the geometry, maybe that will make it easier. So far they're kind of harder to use, but I could see it maybe evolving.
These are the finite element analysis tools that you can give it the pivot point and the anchor point, and it will tell you, oh, this is the most efficient amount of material to make the strength you need.
I did a balance bike for my kids. I basically just said, here's the seat tube and where the wheels mount, and solve for a structure that connects everything. Makes really cool looking organic stuff.
No, I love what it yields, and I think you're right. I think there is real possibility in being able to get to a place where the computer can understand what you mean. I mean, so I work with a lot of people in special effects, and they will scan a hero teacup from a set, and they'll get some approximation of that teacup's topography, but there are artifacts, there's all sorts of artifacts, and someone has to go in and physically get rid of these artifacts and make this surface smooth when all of us can see and know what a teacup looks like, but the computer has no idea.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a gap there. The software could be, we can all imagine how the software could be better, and especially seeing what other AI tools are doing, seems like that should come to 3D more than it has.
This is where I feel like, this is one of the areas I feel has the greatest amount of potential for AI. Haven't seen much utility for AI within my process here in the cave or on Tested yet. However, with the idea of retopologizing crappy meshes, I feel like this is what AI was completely born for, to take away that busy work from human beings.
Yeah. That brings me to another thing I want to ask you about. Obviously, you've been working a lot more digitally. When you started your career, you were working completely in analog and everything with your hands, and you enjoy that and you're great at that. How do you think about working increasingly digitally changes what you do? Is it less fun? Is it, what are the...
It's another tool in the arsenal to solve problems. So my maker journey starts with growing up with a dad who built stuff all over the house. So I had an example that you could do that. Later on, there were these books that came out in the 70s called The World at Your Feet by an architect illustrator named Alan Rose. And they were paper models of the world's most famous landmarks, the Chrysler Building, the Taj Mahal, the Brooklyn Bridge. But these weren't die-cut paper models. They were just printed on heavy paper, and you cut everything out with X-Acto blades. You scored, you put pinholes to score other sides of stuff. And I built, between the ages of 15 and 17, I built every one of those models, probably 20 of them. And so thinking in the forms of paper meeting paper in these planar forms is how I actually think about constructing stuff. So when I showed up at Industrial Light and Magic in 1998, and they had recently acquired a laser cutter, the laser cutter is the tool that executed stuff in the exact way I thought, which was cut out simple paper planar forms and then join them together. So I showed up at ILM, and within a month, I was getting the laser folks to teach me AutoCAD 2D, which is, AutoCAD and 2D, not too difficult to learn, especially if someone gives you some auto list with key commands and stuff. So I became really good at AutoCAD 2D because it thought the way my brain thought. And that has been sort of typical of my integration of digital problem-solving tools within my process. They have to integrate with the way I think about solving problems. Lately, I'm doing a completely different approach, wheeling digital. And I have this aspect that I like old things and I like to replicate old things. But if you look carefully at old things, you notice that our manufacturing processes were really sort of spotty back then and hit or miss. And there's something charming and instructive and informative about that. That tells me about the people that made that thing. And so I have this particular thing, and I don't like CNC for objects that are prop stuff. I find that CNC is a little too cold. It's a little too perfect. CNC letter engraving, it's so exact. It sort of removes a person from the process. So I like to print stuff on the 3D printer that I then trace on my pantograph mill. And then I get a little bit of that shittiness. The ruler embedded into the end of this workbench was made this way. So I wanted to replicate the idea of a haberdasher's ruler in their workbench, which, in the 18th century would have been adjudicated by the king so that you knew you were getting honest inches. And I wanted one of these, but I didn't want to CNC this. So I made this on my mill and the pantograph mill. And every bit of kerning between the numbers is just a little bit crappy. And that's exactly what I wanted. It's precisely the way in which I wanted to execute this. That there's one of the letters is a little bit off. That to me is it's so typical of objects from this time that integrating the digital and the physical has helped me get to a place where I can make exactly the kinds of objects I want to.
But there's clearly going to be more and more digital making, and are you worried that something will be lost? People will forget how to do this and things like this won't exist?
Your question has this a very, I think, common cultural assumption that somehow that digital could be the enemy of the physical art forms, that somehow it could take away something. And I don't think that that's possible. I think that humans, despite all the concerns we have had culturally over the past 120 years about human beings' attention spans, we're still doing remarkable things. We're still collaborating in incredible ways. And human beings are driven to express their point of view. So I don't view the advent of digital tools as in any way inhibiting that. I just think that there are more ways of being able to execute. That's the way I think about all of these things. I made one of these from scratch, and then I asked someone to draw it digitally, and there's probably a third or fourth way I'll end up executing pieces of the British crown jewels, simply because it's I've got to see them made flesh. But I'm agnostic as to how that happens.
Well, that's good to hear, because at Formlabs we're furiously trying to make making more digital. So I'm glad we're taking something.
Listen, I really love having your machines around. They're like family now, right? They don't screw up that often. They're a good member of the team. They deliver stuff that I like to handle. It's like they're a personality within this space, and I really dig it.
Nice. How could we make them better?
It's funny, when people ask me about what my favorite processes are, and I'm agnostic about that. Each of the different 3D printing processes has its utility, they have their strengths and weaknesses. And what I love to point out to people is there's almost no time efficiency with any of the processes. They all sort of end up, on average, taking about the same amount of time and effort from us. There's always going to be some cleanup. There's always going to be some translation between some way in which the process can't get exactly where you want to get. And so you've got to make some efficiencies. To me, I just want to see more and more materials, and really specifically more archival materials. I love working with PLA, but I'm positive that everything I've printed out of PLA in the last 5 years is going to melt in 20 years. It's just going to turn to dust. And frankly, that's one of the things I love about the fuse.
You can tell that the nylon is
nylon is a super stable material. Yeah. It's hygroscopic, but it wants to stay the way that it is. I view this as probably the most archival 3D printing process currently. But no one in the space is talking about archival longevity.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to. I think that's absolutely time to. Museums, I think, should start to be printing their digital collections so that people can touch some of the things in those collections. That's my favorite thing about 3D printing, is printing historical artifacts. I don't have any here right now, but to me, that's where you can start to really touch the past. So I want more of that going on in the world.
Well, that's good to hear, because especially on the resin side, where the materials aren't quite as archival, as you put it.
Yeah.
That's one of our central goals is improving that. And actually next month we're going to announce a couple of new materials that push that further in terms of better aging properties, robustness.
I'm also sure that at some point, there'll be some ultimately like incredible recycling process. Actually, I mean, I love the ability to recycle most of the used powder on the fuse. That's to me one of its best features. Flexible materials too. That's still a difficult area. There's still a lot of material science being done within this space. I know like so many different people are working on this issue. To be frank, I haven't messed with your silicone trays yet. I'm really excited to. We've been talking about a project to figure out to use with them because I definitely want to try playing with printing the rubber.
And there's also a SLS TPU material that you might like. That's a rubbery SLS material.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I totally want to try that.
Yeah. I did the tires for the balance bike in SLS TPU and printed some Formlabs butterflies into the tread. It held up reasonably well with like the flexural type of tires.
That's really cool. Tires are hard. Tires are really difficult.
Yeah. I read your book and you talked about a lot of things in there that really, really resonated with me. One of them is this idea of obsession being a big part of what you do and helps you make great things, that you obsess over the detail over it. But you also talked about some of your experiences as a kid of revealing yourself in your obsessions and that not being a positive experience in the school environment.
I mean obsession, by the way, recreationally, not clinically.
Fine line.
Just to be clear. But, to me, when I say obsession, I really mean those things that you can't stop thinking about. Your career and your lifespan. And one of the things I find fascinating about those questions is that any life from the moment you're talking about it looks fairly linear. I'm sure there are aspects of your childhood explorations that like seem, oh, that guy was going here, right? And those things that you can't stop thinking about as a kid, they are to me very much the parts of your future self starting to arrive in you. They are parts of this brain. You've been given it, you don't know what it can do, you don't know what it's interested in, but hey, I can't stop thinking about that thing. And then you get that thing, you get closer to that thing, and well, there's more thinking to do. And you get closer to that, and then you start to find you're solving problems. I get chills just describing this process, because to me, it's so magical. I experienced it on MythBusters on a scientific and engineering frame, because every episode we were encountering concepts or ideas that I had no previous exposure to. So the goal was just to read about it until I felt like I had something to say. Or we as a team, a 25-person machine, would go over these stories until we felt like we would argue and fight and celebrate and try to come to a conclusion that felt like we had something to contribute to that. So to me, the stuff you can't stop thinking about, it is you. It is us. And yeah, when we're exploring that as kids can be cruel, and they will find the ways in which you're being revealed and they'll use it against you. And a lot of people learn to not explore that stuff from that. I feel really lucky to have grown up in a really permissive household where I did not consider that, that was never an option, giving up that creative frame.
That's great, but not everybody has that. But I'm kind of hopeful that for me, nerds or geeks are basically people who are obsessed with stuff that's not the most common or popular things to be obsessed with. And I'm optimistic that today, as like technology and making stuff actually just becomes more important, more valuable, that people are obsessed with stuff. It's becoming more valuable, and it's becoming kind of more understood that like this is actually a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think we're getting to a point where we're understanding that culture happens because people can't stop thinking about small things, and they keep on talking about it. They keep on comparing their notes. That to me is the engine of everything that we can do as human beings.
And in your book, you had this great line: "I fight against all the ways that the tools of creation are kept out of the hands of our most dynamic and creative minds." And I love that line. It's almost the same as our mission: build the tools that make it possible for anyone to bring their ideas to life. And I felt the same thought, that there's a lot of untapped potential to make things, either because people don't have the tools or they don't feel comfortable obsessing over something, or various limiters.
Well, I feel like a lot of the stopgap comes where people think that there's a right way to learn stuff. 500 years ago, we did everything with guilds, right? Because knowledge was hard to go get. It was localized. It tended to be protected information. Now that's no longer the case in any way, shape, or form. But there are still folks who think that, well, the way that they came up and learned their craft is the way you need to learn it. And there's nothing that'll make you less interested in learning something new than someone who thinks there's only one way to get there. You guys have been making tools for decades, and I'm sure you have been regularly astonished by what people do with your tools that you never thought of. And being awake to that is magic. You went through one execution, but there's a million of them. And one of the great things about the democratization of information is that it's never been easier to find your people than it is today. When I was growing up in the 70s and I was in New York in the 80s, when you were really interested in esoteric stuff, you went and got hand Xeroxed zines at the zine store on the Lower East Side. That was like esoteric culture. And now that's what the internet is right now, right? The internet is that globally.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and for me, that's the exact line that brought me to starting Formlabs, because I think I was basically the first generation that grew up completely on the internet and had access to all the world's information at my fingertips, and I would just for fun would learn different digital tools. I would pirate some CAD software or some photo editing software and just mess around with these things, and so it was normal, even though historically it's not at all normal, but for me it was normal that you could become expert in something just by trying it out and reading about it on the internet. I like physical things more, so I wanted to do more physical making. And then you confront physical making and you can get the knowledge, but it's so hard to try things because it's more expensive. The tools are expensive. Every time you try something expensive, so there's still a guild aspect to learning physical things. You got to have access to the shop or the tools or whatever. So that's what 3D printing is one of the big things that's changing is it's making it so accessible that now you can have the 10-year-old kid with access to the internet and a 3D printer can actually become great at making things.
I love the idea that I'll buy my future iPhone cases from a kid down the street, right? That's a really great reality to me. And one of the places in which, this is funny, I hadn't considered this, but one of the places in which digital tools find their greatest amount of purchase with me is on Etsy. I buy a lot of files on Etsy, but I also find people whose work I like and commission stuff from them on Etsy. Etsy has a fundamentally different philosophy about selling stuff than eBay does. eBay does not want you and the seller to talk in any way unless there's a problem, and then it wants to solve that problem and stop that conversation. Etsy wants you to talk to the creator, wants you to talk to the seller, and engendering that relationship has actually been huge for my process here. I think there's objects in here from at least a dozen different Etsy sellers that were commissions, some of them months long, some of them years long. And all of that is within that, go find someone executing in this framework and see what you guys can do together. That's a lovely reality.
I guess another way that the internet is changing what you do personally is now with Tested. It seems to me you've evolved into your final form where you get to do what you want to do without needing a big other organization or distribution channel. You can work on the products you want and distribute them directly to people via YouTube and whatever, and make a living doing it. Is it as awesome as it seems?
It is. It feels even more awesome than it seems. I live only a couple of blocks from here, and so this reality right now feels like I found a cheat code, and I am constantly grateful that the stories that I like to tell and execute in here are interesting enough to people to support me and this small ragtag team we have. We're only 7 that makes Tested. But the tightness of that team and the beauty of what we get to make, I'm really, really grateful for. Forever in my career up until Tested, up until really COVID to a certain extent, I viewed time in my shop as a scarcity model because I almost never had it, right? I had to work full time. Even MythBusters, we're doing 42 weeks a year. I would get in here about 3-4 hours a month. So to upend the scarcity model of being here and just coming in 40 hours a week, making stuff, filming stuff, it feels really, really dreamy. I also know that it is a huge amount of luck that allows the stories I'm telling to be interesting to people, that the journey I'm going on is somehow culturally relevant. And that's not always the case. And, I think a lot of young YouTubers grow up thinking, like, I'm just going to make stuff people like and it's going to make me some dough. And look, that is a certain business model and that can be executed. There are pitfalls to that business model. I prefer another way, which is just like, where we started, which was talking about being obsessive about the things you can't stop thinking about. This affords me a tremendous machine to keep exploring that and talk to other people about their journeys exploring the same thing.
Well, I didn't quite get the differentiation between you saying other YouTubers aren't you just making what you want and and putting it on YouTube, or what's the difference?
I don't think we are distinct from other YouTube channels in any specific way. We celebrate making and we talk about it from a past tense standpoint to a certain extent. I like to joke that our channel isn't a how-to channel. It's more like a what happened channel, right? You're watching me screw up. For a long time on Reddit, I was like the patron saint of watch people die inside subreddit because there were so many videos of me like finishing something and realizing I'd done it backwards. I love the fact that YouTube allows me to tell some stories that are 8 minutes long and some stories that are 80 minutes long. And I can occasionally make the same money from both of those things.
It's been really interesting for us at this point. Like a large portion of the like fresh grad engineers that we hire have some kind of social media like documentation of their projects, and it's like almost becoming everyone's a content creator today.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because you have in your career worked with some amazing engineers at the very top world level of this kind of engineering, I'm sure. And I'm also sure you have seen what I have seen, which is comm skills. Just being able to talk really cogently about what you're doing is like 100x multiplier to being a great engineer. And I've met amazing engineers who cannot communicate what they're doing. And I've met mediocre engineers who are so good at communicating what they're doing, they get a lot more done. I love the idea of people developing their comm skills, taking an improv class, taking an acting class, getting comfortable, being able to execute your thoughts in situ, riding that, surfing. You're doing interviews all the time, balancing what you can and can't talk about, stuff you're going to prognosticate or think about. These are skills that you just have to learn by doing them. And I think that we'll all be better engineers when we're better at talking about what we do.
Absolutely. When I see someone post a really great project on social media, that's awesome. But when they do a great job explaining why they built it and what's important about it, it's super important. And it's what I see from it is not just like pure communication skill, but to me that's actually like what we would call like product management, because it's showing that they understand like what's important here, what the world cares about, why anyone should care about what they're doing. And that's what I think a lot of engineers are missing. Even if you're not like a great communicator in the typical sense, but if you know what is important about this thing and show people, that engages.
Well, I want to lower the bar for communication here, because I think a lot of people in the abstract, thinking about YouTube and the kind of engineering and building channels we're talking about, think that like, oh, so comm skills means being really good at laying out your thoughts for constructing a project. I don't mean that at all. I mean, when people think about the channels like that we're describing, they think of them as people making stuff and executing a story about making stuff. But what's really happening is that a lot of engineering channels are building stuff, messing it up, covering that, talking about it. Our friend Breaking Taps, a wonderful YouTube channel, I've seen him do videos where he wasted a month on something that never worked, and there's a cut to him where he just looks so like just defeated. Now, when a channel puts something like that up, that tells a young engineer that you can be at the peak of your craft and still be absolutely defeated by something. That's a really important lesson that channel is teaching that has nothing to do with engineering and everything to do with engineering at the same time.
Yeah. The first interview I did like this was with Shane White and Stuff Made here. Yeah, he led engineering at Formlabs for many years before he became a full-time YouTuber, and is a great example of one of those super duper talented engineers I've gotten to work with.
In the best of circumstances, it's really hard to talk about engineering with engineers. It's like hard to compare. I used to joke that Jamie and I, in our working relationship on MythBusters, it would have been a lot easier if we had USB drives in our necks and we could just be like, doop, doop. And
Matrix
instead,
plugs, yeah.
we used a complicated, ancient process we call arguing. And, you know, it's complicated, and it's really like, that's why I love working on teams too. There's a lot of great engineers working alone, but working on teams forces you to be able to talk about what you're doing. It forces you to really, if you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to come out when you're talking to another engineer, and you're going to figure out where you're missing.
That's actually one thing I don't love about the YouTube builder creator world is it's almost encouraging people to work independently, or that's like the typical
We're thinking that that's some ideal model.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No,
what I know for sure from my work, like if you want to make something that a lot of people are going to use, that's going to really make a big impact, like it's going to take multiple people.
Yeah.
And like learning to do that well and engaging with that. And it's painful. Like it's kind of easier to do things on your own.
Totally.
But
if you have any ambition,
yeah,
you're going to have to wheel other people. And you're totally right. It involves other people. And that's both really difficult in the best teams. It can be, you can have really terrible days where communication's super difficult.
Yeah.
That's all really true. But like, yeah, I totally agree with that. There's another aspect that I'd love to get better about the 3D printing process, and that is scanning. Scanning is still, I'm surprised at what a difficult problem scanning still is. It's gotten tremendously better in the past 20 years. And still, there are times when I'm holding something and my friend with an excellent scanner is like, yeah, I'm going to have trouble getting you details on that.
Yeah. You played with the Lumafield CT scanner, right?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That's kind of like a Formlabs related company. A bunch of Formlabs people left to start that company. But yeah, CT scanners kind of changed the scanning game to some degree, because don't depend on looking at the part from the outside, and they can basically just get the full volume of it.
When that gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, that's really exciting reality to me. Because there's a lot of times I want to scan something, print it, and start messing with it. And frankly, that process is very complex still right now. That's a pipeline I'd like to be smoother.
Just the CT scanners, they require a lot of lead.
Right. It's not the lead that you have to go to the bottom of the Mediterranean, like the pre-World War II nuclear testing lead.
You don't need that stuff, but you still need a pretty big, heavy machine.
I'm curious, of all the years you've been making 3D printers, do you have, and I know this is a question you get all the time, so it's probably a terrible question to answer, but what is the weirdest or most surprising thing somebody has executed with one of your machines?
So many things. When we launched the Form 1 on Kickstarter, we sold, I think, almost exactly 1,000 units. And in that first 1,000 already, we saw all possible craziness.
Because things you would, despite your spending years thinking about it.
2 sex toy shops out of the first 1,000. And I'm just like, I'm impressed that people in those shops are like, oh, new 3D printer, like, I know what to do with that. And like,
people are endlessly inventive in their desire to make new things.
And then another really early customer of Form 1 was this French stop motion movie maker who did a whole, I think it was like a feature length film with thousands and thousands of printed parts. And the Form 1 was not working that great at that time, so he was really dedicated to that. We have somebody in Italy, Mattia Mercante, who's been a customer since like the beginning, who does museum models and repair of ancient classical sculptures. So he'll print a little part to fit into the missing part of the marble or something like that.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah. And then for me, the part I love the most is people doing kind of what we do is hardware product development, especially small startups, where they're now doing something that 10 years ago you couldn't have done with like a small team of 5 or 10 people, but now because the tools are getting better, they're able to take on crazy new challenge. Like you met, what's the name of the company that's doing the swallowable?
Oh yeah, Pillbot.
Pillbot, yeah. Actually, I have something I've been meaning to do with them for a long time that maybe we can work on together. You made a comment in your video about the Magic School Bus, or you talked about like the Magic School Bus.
Oh yeah, the pills coming. Yeah, the Pixar, the bleak Pixar film about the future lives of the Pillbots.
Well, I want to make like a little housing for the Pillbot that's like a magic school bus. Like, so you like actually swallow a small yellow bus, and
Oh, I love that.
and then it drives around in your stomach. Yeah.
I think that's perfect. Dude, so we haven't even gotten to the elephant in the room, which is that like any news story that talks about your business is going to bring up the Star Trek replicator.
Give me a martini straight up with 2 olives.
So how are you guys at all playing around with voice recognition where I can say, make me a 1/4-20 bolt 6 inches long with a flanged end and a hex top?
We actually did a project with an MIT research group on like demoing exactly that, like print me. I think
Voice
we
to
did print me an M3 bolt was one of the demos.
I love it.
I can't say it's actually useful yet, but it's just to string together all the technologies and like start to imagine like. Yeah, I think each part of that pipeline is going to get better and better, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. We've also been just printing out, like you can download CAD models for tons of parts on McMaster.
Yes.
So we've been going through and trying to see how many of them we can print like an adequate version of, and it's pretty cool. As the materials improve, as the accuracy improves, like our coverage of the McMaster library is...
What are some of the stuff you printed that has been most surprisingly useful? Because I want to download and start doing this right away.
I saw some strange things I would have thought wouldn't work. Like there was it's like a metal, like a latch, like over center kind of.
Oh yeah, and you were able to 3D print the whole
and
thing?
It was meant to be all metal, but some people at Formlabs they printed it in nylon, and they just like thickened up a couple of the sections, and it worked just like translated from metal to plastic. So that was pretty cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, but probably more useful are like just like endless plumbing fittings. You know, there's every possible combination of different fittings and manifolds. I think those are on track to be like largely replaced with 3D printers.
There's been several different activations of 3D printers brought into third world countries to solve local problems. And among them, I remember encountering one, well, number one, a lot of them, they don't go unless they're asked. But one of the main things they print out in the middle of nowhere is pipe fittings.
Yeah.
It is basically translating some garden hose to some fitting that they have. And I realized, oh my God, this is the hardest problem to solve out in the field. The 3D printers are like, send us in, coach. We've been built for this.
A random plastic thing about this size, that's like 3D printers.
Exactly. It's exactly what they were meant for. And I love that, the wrench up on the ISS, right? Like that kind of stuff gets really, really thrilling. The idea of that object traveling through wires and becoming extant somewhere else.
Speaking about 3D printers making an impact in different places in the world, I'm actually traveling to Ukraine next month. Our printers are getting used quite a lot in the defense of Ukraine.
Amazing.
As well as in like prosthetics applications for veterans.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy the scale, not just our printers, but like almost all the drones you see in Ukraine are covered with 3D printed parts. It's kind of unprecedented in history that sort of it's like new manufacturing technology is getting pressed into service.
I've been finding myself wondering about that. I visited the Walter Reed prosthetics department about 8 or 7 years ago and was really impressed with how they were already integrating 3D scanning, 3D printing technologies. But the real leap that's been made in the past 10 years, I can't even imagine how much farther along.
The surprising thing, I think, for a lot of people who would have looked at it 10 or 15 years ago is like, there wasn't like one thing that changed. Like everyone was asking when we were starting, like, how is it 10x, like tell us it's gonna be 10x faster, 10x better. Right. And it wasn't one 10xing. It was just across the board, like get a bit faster, get a bit more accurate, get a bit cheaper, get a bit easier to use. And it just like steadily takes over more and more things. And that's how we see it continuing to advance.
And I noticed that, like, I think the sort of that front line of early adopters, which is special effects studios, right?
Yep.
They're still spread spectruming this problem. They're still buying, if they can afford it, a dozen of each model so that they can be executing, iterating, and making sure everything's working.
And that's the best way. Like, I don't think anyone should like just use our tools. There's so many good tools, so many good 3D printers out there. Like, the best shop has got as many different types of tools as possible.
Yeah, I like being agnostic as to the process. It's just, it's what works in this moment. Dude, I love the stuff you guys are doing. I love what it's making possible in the world, both for my creative process, but also, again, it's a democratization of the physical world that I think is really important.
That's what we're trying to do. Sure, I'll show you my latest project.
Well, and I'm also, I'm curious if you guys are thinking about color. I know also some other friends of mine who manufacture objects are being told in China that you can add a laser printer to everything for like $70. So, like, I'm very excited about what's coming down the pipeline.
We have a new color service where you can order a resin in any RGB color, and soon we'll add Pantone color matching. Yeah. So it's like...
What is the process of being able to add Pantone? Do you have to pay a fortune to Pantone to be able to do that?
You have to pay them money. Yeah, it's a weird business. You're basically just like licensing the name Pantone.
Tom Sachs prefers the Benjamin Moore. He's like, Benjamin Moore has a wider and more delicate color palette than Pantone.
Diving into this color, I'm sure you know, is like much more complicated. Like, everyone's kind of familiar with like RGB on a computer, and actual colors in real life are so much more complicated. Yeah, so we had to become color scientists. The project I wanted to show you. Refresh the first one. I've been printing this flying wing. I've been working on some printed RC airplanes for a little while. I've always loved RC airplanes and airplanes in general since I was a kid, but I make 3D printers for my job, so I kind of get to do this as a hobby. One really cool People part of it I printing want to show you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of RC airplanes with FDM printers. I wanted to see what you could do with SLA. So I made a first version of this flying wing. It flew okay. It's the first airplane I had designed. Didn't get everything perfectly right, but I went back to do another version. I'm trying to go for something that's like the minimal amount of assembly possible. This is a single part. The whole thing prints in a single
That wing
Form
warps
4L
itself?
build.
Yeah.
The
All
comes out of the main printer. Parts just kind of standing
Fuck,
vertically.
no way.
They pop right off support structures. They click in pretty nicely.
And so is the actuator centralized and it pulls on a certain part of it?
There's a servo for each control surface, but that would drive. Cool. There's actually like a little structure inside.
I love that you're back to the Wright brothers, wing warping.
Or to birds.
So yeah, oh, that's great.
We're gonna go fly it right now.
Well, that's super cool.
Probably the last time I'm gonna see it intact.
We've done a ton of stuff with Adam Woodworth here. I don't know if you know Adam. Google Wing. He runs Google Wing.
Oh yeah. Nice. Flying a lot better though. That's awesome. There was a very unfortunately placed fence.
Yep. Breakaway bottles, man. Have you explored breakaway proppage?
Breakaway.
Well, so like in the movies, when if I hit you over the head with a bottle, the way they do that is somebody spent however long, half an hour casting sugar into a bottle mold. If you guys printed a breakaway frangible clear resin, you could change Hollywood overnight.
I'm sure we have a lot of
that it would shatter into like a million pieces the moment you
making a really shitty 3D printing material that breaks easily. That's easy. So,
yeah,
so
right.
we can do that.
Bomb it with UV after it's been cured.
Normally,
right?
we're trying to make it so that it will hurt if it hits you. But.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you for taking so much time. Tell me about all the amazing stuff you're doing, Adam.
Dude, it's been really, really lovely, and I can't wait to see what new stuff you guys are working on. Your machines have brought a lot of possibility into our process here on Tested, so thank you.
We've got a lot of new printers and materials coming for you soon.
Awesome.